It was indeed the time of death. I smelled it in the air, saw traces of it in the smoke and dust that filled the sky. Every day brought me deadly news. Some of the news was told to me by Sarma, whose eyes grew more and more haunted as the days went by. Vibhishan had been banished. Ravan had kicked him in the chest, the greatest insult an Asura could imagine, in the presence of all the courtiers, and called him a traitor. Sarma had wanted to live with him, but Vibhishan refused to allow it. He has gone to join Ram, Sarma told me. He wouldn't take me. He told me it was too dangerous. He told me that I needed to remain here so I could comfort you and support our son. Her face was filled with sorrow, for no matter who won, forever to the Asuras, her husband would be known as Vibhishan the traitor. What will he do once he joined forces with Ram? I asked. Sarma did not answer, but I guessed what she was afraid of. Vibhishan knew all the Asura warriors, their strengths and weaknesses, which astras would destroy whom. Would he divulge all this to Ram? Would he be willing to cause the destruction of his people, including his son, because of his belief in righteousness? Time crested over us, a wave waiting to break. Against all possibility, a bridge was constructed over the ocean, stones that would not sink, as though the ocean god himself held them up with his 1,000 hands. Still, I doubted and feared. How could my husband, helped only by a band of monkeys, win against the hosts of Asuras that had defeated even the gods? But these monkeys were not like any other. With Ram and Lakshman leading them, they crossed the ocean and besieged the city. When the Asura soldiers went out to meet them, they fell on them like crazed beings, slaying hundreds with nail and tooth, stone and tree. They refused to retreat, no matter how many of their brethren were killed by Ravan's army. My guards huddled and spoke in frightened whispers, forgetting in their anxiety to torture me. This must be aided by the gods. How else could monkeys fight like this? And how about those two brothers? Who knew that puny humans like them would have such powerful divine astras? That Ram, a single arrow shot by him, can destroy a phalanx of seasoned warriors? And last of all, what is going to become of our beautiful Lanka? What is going to become of us? Some days things did not go well for Ram. On such days, Ravan came personally to see me and to enumerate my husband's losses. 20,000 monkeys killed. Who knows how many more wounded? Lakshman struck by a spear and carried off the field. Ram forced to call for a retreat. You can stop this massacre, he would say. All you have to do is say yes to me. I will send word to Ram that you have decided to become my wife. I am quite sure he will leave at that point. And here is my promise to you. I will let him go safely and with dignity. I would keep my face turned away until he left. To his credit, he never tried to force me again. One day, when he was approaching us, a couple of my Rakshasi guards started pushing me around, hoping for his approval. But he raised his hand to stop them. Ah, let her be, he said. I tried to read his voice. Was it pity or tiredness? For by now the war had stretched us all to breaking point, or certainty that it was just a matter of time before he had his way with me. I was not sure. Until the end, he would remain an enigma, this Asura king. Day by day, though Ram was gaining ground, his monkeys seemed to grow stronger as time passed. Maces thrown at their chest shattered. Arrows deflected off their bodies as though they had hit iron. One by one, the great and noble Rakshasa warriors, Dhum Rakshasa, Akampana, Prahasta, were sent out by Ravan to lead his army. They bowed to their lord, promising to bring him victory. None returned. One morning, I was awakened by a tremendous din, trumpets, and the clash of cymbals coming from one of the palaces. Trijata said, Ravan's brother Kumbhakarna is being awakened. He sleeps for 6 months and awakens for a day, but on that day, thanks to Brahma's boon, he is invincible. Is today that day? I asked. My heart threw itself against the case of my ribs. No, Ravan has been forced to wake him at the wrong time. Look, there he goes. The Asura's enormous head rose high above the walls, obscuring the sun. He bellowed a deafening battle cry. My heart sank even as I prayed. Who could defeat such a monster? But amazingly, he too didn't return. From the Ashoka grove, I could hear the entire city mourning their fallen hero. My Rakshasi gods glared at me with hate and fear. Her husband must know big magic, one said, to kill the great Kumbhakarna. I wanted to feel elation, but I only felt a deep tiredness. How much longer before the massacres ended? Trijata came by bursting with news. The crown prince, Indrajit, the undefeatable, The commander of Ravan's forces had been summoned this morning. Ravan had held off on calling upon him all this time because he was the heir to the throne and he had promised Mandodari not to endanger him. But finally, he had no choice. He should have done it earlier, Trijata said. We all know that Indrajit is invincible, especially after he performs the Nikumbila Yajna and is blessed by the fire god. My heart was like a block of ice rattling in my chest. What ill news had Trijata brought now? Tell us what he did. One of the Rakshasis cried. We are the last to hear anything. Stuck as we are here, guarding this stupid human. She kicked at me, but distractedly. They all gathered around Trijata to get news of Indrajit. Clearly, he was everyone's darling. Well, first he killed a bunch of monkeys, fighting so hard that they all fell back. Even their king Sugriv beat a retreat. But that was not enough for our Indrajit. He used his magic powers and flew into the sky, calling up an invisibility cloud around him. Then he travelled close to Ram and Lakshman and challenged them to battle with him. It was a glorious fight, the guards on the ramparts told me, each warrior using his best weapons, each cutting through the other's arrows. But finally, Indrajit called upon the powerful Nag Astra. A million poisonous snakes exploded from it and bound Ram and Lakshman in their coils. And so the brothers fell. My Rakshasi gods raised an outcry of joy. Glory be to our prince, one of them said. Now this horrible war can end. I don't believe it, I said with more bravado than I felt. Inside, my ice heart exploded into a million shots, each piercing me to the core. Ravan thought you might say that, Trijata said. So he has instructed me to take you to view their bodies. Trijata led me to Pushpak, the flying chariot. All along the way, Rakshasas were celebrating. Dance, song, intoxicating drinks. Some spat at me, but most ignored me. In their minds, I was no longer of importance. The sight of Pushpak brought back so many terrible memories. I could hardly breathe. My hands grew clammy and my legs trembled. But I hardened myself and climbed in. I had to know the truth. Then I would know what I needed to do. The battlefield was a patchwork of blood, new and tragically bright, old and hopelessly dark. The stench hit me even though I was high in the air. There were so many bodies tangled together, I feared I would never find my husband and his brother. But Pushpak knew where to go. I looked down, and there they were, Ram and Lakshman, bound together by writhing serpents, unlike any I had ever seen, otherworldly creatures born of darkest magic. The two brothers' faces were black and swollen with poison and pain. Around them lay several monkeys, also turning black. I figured that they had valiantly tried to pry the serpents off Ram and Lakshman. The rest of the monkeys made a dejected circle around the fallen, not daring to approach the serpents. I looked for Hanuman. Surely he wouldn't have given up. But I could not find him in the huddled throng. I had seen enough. The decision didn't take but a moment. I closed my eyes and leaped off the edge of the chariot. It was what I should have done the very first moment I was in it. It would have saved so many lives, all sacrificed for me who did not deserve it. Oh Ram, I thought, my dearest, I am so sorry for bringing this death upon you. I don't know what evil karmas of mine separated us and caused us both so much sorrow. But at least we will be together now, and your purpose will be fulfilled. I will be delivered from Ravan's clutches. I slammed into something hard almost immediately. Reeling, I opened my eyes and found I was still in the chariot. I put out my hand, but I felt nothing. Was Pushpak surrounded by some kind of magical wall? Trijata gave me a shake. Wanted to get me into trouble, did you? No one gets away from Ravan that easily. And no one gets in or out of Pushpak unless its master, that is our king, in case you had any doubts, wishes it. Let us get you back now. Ravan said he is coming over to see you today. I fell to the floor of the chariot and lay dry eyed. My sorrow was so great, no tears could express it. So, even death was beyond my reach. I would be Ravan's captive forever now. How long would I be able to hold out? Or would I, as Shurpanaka had threatened, be given to her for slavery and torture? I felt deep hum rising from within the chariot, a throbbing that passed into my body. It was as though Pushpak sorrowed in my despair, though it had no power to go against its master's will. When Pushpak landed, I refused to get up. Trijata gave an exasperated sigh. I thought she would hit me again. I lay still, welcoming the pain, but she just hoisted me onto her shoulder and took me back to the grove. And that too was frightening. My situation was so dire that even Trijata felt pity for me. Late that night, I heard the Rakshasis whispering. Surprisingly, they sounded worried. I sat up to listen, but they gave me glances filled with hate and fear and moved away. I had to wait until Sarma came to see me the next morning to find out what had happened. Sarma looked harried. Her sari was askew, and her beautiful hair, which she took pride in braiding into intricate designs, was an uncombed tangle. She told me that soon after I left the scene, after the monkeys had lost all hope and begun their morning wails, the sky filled with an enormous cloud. No, it was a bird, silver white, huge beyond imagining, its curved beak large enough to swallow an entire Rakshasa phalanx. It hovered over the brothers and flapped its wings, raising a blinding wall of dust. When the dust subsided, the snakes were gone, and the brothers sat up, blinking as though waking from a dark dream. The bird hovered for a while over your husband, the gods reported later, as though speaking to him, though it did not use words. Sarma said. She stared at me, eyes narrowed. Who is Ram, really? He can't be a mere human because that was Garuda, the celestial bird companion of the supreme god Vishnu, who came to rescue him. I wished I knew the answer to that. Instead, I said, You seem very disturbed today. My son Tarani Sen has been asked to lead the army tomorrow, she said. I gripped Sarma's hand, but she pulled them away and turned from me. I could only imagine the turmoil in her. On one side, her husband, on the other, her only child, and in front of her, the woman responsible for all her troubles. For one of us, this day would end in tragedy. No, the death of Tarnisen would wrench my heart too. Sarma said, I begged him not to go into battle, but of course we both knew that was impossible. Tarani Sen is loyal to the king, thorough and thorough, even though he loves his father and agrees with him. We knew also that he was doomed. He is a fine warrior, but no match for your husband. She was weeping now. When he left, he smiled and touched my feet and told me to be of a good cheer. He had had a vision that Ram was the supreme being come to earth to purify us and remove our sorrows. Death at his hand would be a glorious blessing. She wiped her eyes and looked at me for confirmation. Ram was the whole world to me. Everyone who knew him claimed he was special. But was he the supreme being? Was death at his hand a glorious blessing? I was not sure. I breathed in the air, filled with the stench of carrion. Tardi Sen had been trained by Vibhishan himself. All day he fought marvelously. The greatest of the monkey warriors, Hanuman included, could not stand against his wrath. He wounded even Ram. But finally, Ram called on the Brahmastra and killed him. Vibhishan must have told him, Sarma said. She had fainted at the news, but now she was calm, a statue of ice. Only Vibhishan knew the secret of his death. I realized that even if Ram won the war and Vibhishan was made king of Lanka and she, the queen, Sarma would never forgive her husband for his betrayal. Atrocities escalated on both sides. The Vanara army was being decimated, but even more Rakshasas fell each day. All this death for my sake. What a waste it was. Every moment I regretted that I hadn't listened to Hanuman and allowed him to carry me away. After Taranisen's death, I did not see Sarma again. Trijata said, Ravan has ordered that no one except himself can see you from now on. But I wondered if the real reason was that Sarma could not bear to look at me. Thus, I lost my only friend in Lanka. I had to make do now with whatever gossip filtered to me through my Rakshasi guards. The war was not going well. Ravan's ministers had advised him to send me out to Ram to end the killing of his people. But of course, he had refused. I would rather die with honor than live in shame, he declared. The Rakshasas looked uncertain as they discussed his decision. They were proud of their king's courage, of course, and too loyal to question him. But so many of their dear ones had died already. Lanka, once lauded as the most beautiful, most magical city in the three worlds, had become a charnel house. And the archenemy Ram and his brother also, even when you killed them, they refused to die, one said. Look how Ravan struck Lakshman down, added another. He pierced him in the heart with his magic spear, the Shakti shield, given to him by the goddess herself. His death was certain, but then that monkey, the same one that burnt up our lovely city, flew far north and carried back an entire mountain of herbs and saved him. They are being helped unfairly by gods and sages. A third Rakshasi said, It is not right. They glared at me, who was the cause of it all. If it was not for Ravan's strict orders, they would have torn me limb from limb. I understood their fury. In their place, wouldn't I have felt the same way? Time faded in and out of focus as I sat under my Ashoka tree, its greyness pierced only by bereft veils. I held on to Ram's ring and prayed for an end to all the suffering around me. Surely it would come soon. After Lakshman's near death, I heard Ram fought with greater fury than ever before. The Rakshasas whispered frantically. Was it true that a mendicant had come to Mandodari and said, Have you hidden carefully enough the death arrow created by the gods to slay Ravan, which he had wrested from Indra and given to you for safekeeping long ago? Yes, I have, the queen said. Are you sure the place is safe? The mendicant asked. Are you sure the enemies will not guess where it is? Perhaps you should move it to a safer place. I am sure it is safe, Mandodari said. But her voice quavered and involuntarily she glanced at the spire of the temple of the goddess, which had lain empty ever since the statue of the goddess had disappeared from it. At once, the mendicant metamorphosed into a giant monkey and leapt upon the temple roof. He punched at the spire with his huge fairy fist, shattering it. Within was an arrow colored like lightning. The monkey grabbed it with both arms, pulled it free of the stones within which it was embedded, and shouting the name of Ram as though it was a battle cry, flew into the sky. Mandodari sent her guards after him immediately, but by then it was already too late. The monkey had disappeared. When I heard the story, my heart seemed to expand until I could hardly breathe. My Hanuman. I was delighted by his trickery and its success. He would make sure the death arrow reached Ram. For the first time, I believed that my rescue was possible, that it was close. Next morning, the weeping of my gods grew particularly intense. Indrajit had fallen. He too threw treachery. The Rakshasis cursed Vibhishan, who had led Lakshman and a contingent of monkeys to the secret place where Indrajit performed the Nikumbila Yajna. They fell on him while he was praying and defiled the sacred fire. Indrajit duelled bravely with Lakshman, but he was unprepared, armorless. Lakshman killed him, and the monkeys kicked at his dead body until it was a shapeless mass of flesh. The war had devolved from a righteous cause into gleeful carnage. Perhaps that is the way of all wars. When they brought Mandodari, her son's mutilated body, her cries rent the entire city. The very foundations of the city cracked with sorrow. Around me, the trunks of the Ashoka trees split apart in distress. Hearing her sorrow, Ravan knew what had happened. Their valiant, blameless son, whose only flaw was that he had obeyed his father without question, was gone. He swooned and fell from his throne to the ground. For an entire day, he lay there, eyes unfocused. When he finally returned to himself, he said, "Now I know how it feels to have your heart torn from your body." There was only one thing left for him to do. He roused himself and called upon the remnants of his army. They rode out to war with their king, knowing they would not return. Disobeying the explicit orders they had been given, my Rakshasi gods left me and rushed to the gates of the city to see their beloved king one last time in his terrible splendor, to offer him a hero's farewell. They too did not return. I could have walked out of the Ashoka grove and gone anywhere I wished. I could have walked out of the city to the battlefield. Part of me longed for it, to see the final battle, Ravan's death at the hands of my beloved husband, my vindication. But I did not. I waited for Ram to come to me to see how I had suffered for his sake. Thanks for listening. Now some word power. Time crested over us, a wave waiting to break. Time crested over means Time has reached its highest point. Some days things did not go well for Ram. On such days, Ravan came personally to see me and to enumerate my husband's losses. Enumerate. Enumerate means mention one by one. Ah, let her be, he said. I tried to read his voice. Was it pity or tiredness? For by now the war had stretched us all to breaking point, or certainly that it was just a matter of time before he had his way with me. I was not sure. Until the end, he would remain an enigma, this Asura king. Enigma. Enigma means a person or thing that is mysterious or difficult to understand. Day by day, though, Ram was gaining ground. His monkeys seemed to grow stronger as time passed. Maces thrown at their chest shattered. Mace means a heavy club with a spiked metal head. One morning, I was awakened by a tremendous din, trumpets, and the clash of cymbals coming from one of the palaces. Cymbal. Cymbal means a flat, round musical instrument. The sight of Pushpak brought back so many terrible memories, I could hardly breathe. My hands grew clammy and my legs trembled. Clammy. Clammy means sweaty. Around them lay several monkeys, also turning black. I figured that they had valiantly tried to pry the serpents off Ram and Lakshman. PryOff, pry off means to force something apart or detach it by using leverage. Sarma looked harried. Harried. Harried means harassed, strained, worried and angry. Sarma said, I begged him not to go into battle, but of course we both knew that was impossible. Tarini Sen is loyal to the king thorough and thorough, even though he loves his father and agrees with him. Thorough and thorough means in every way. I breathed in the air, filled with the stench of carrion. Carrion. Carrion means the foul and unpleasant odor emitted by dead or decaying flesh. Atrocities escalated on both sides. The Vanara army was being decimated. Decimate. Decimate means to kill a large number of something. I am sure it is safe, Mandodari said, but her voice quavered and involuntarily she glanced at the spire of the temple of the goddess, which had lain empty ever since the statue of the goddess had disappeared from it. Quaver. Quaver means tremble, shake. At once the mendicant metamorphosed into a giant monkey and leapt upon the temple roof. Metamorphose. Metamorphose means to change into a completely different form or type. The war had devolved from a righteous cause into gleeful carnage. Perhaps that is the way of all wars. Devolve, devolve means to change from one thing to another, often to something bad. Devolve means degenerate. Thanks for listening.